Hello, I want us to take the next few minutes to take a very quick, oversimplified look at what exactly is the mark of the beast, or what is the number of the beast. I've been asked to give my take on this as a minister. You know, throughout the generations, there's been several items or instances or certain events that many have said, "Oh, this is the mark of the beast. This is the number of the beast," without really knowing what exactly that means. So let's look at Revelation 13. Let's get into the context. Let's talk a little bit about the book of Revelation, and let's learn exactly what is the mark of the beast. Now, we're going to start in Revelation 13 in verse 16, but you could back up a few verses to really get a fuller context of what's happening here in this passage. So here's how it reads starting in verse 16. It says, "Also, it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has that mark. That is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the one who has understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. All right, so taking these verses in isolation makes no sense. But that happens to a lot of Bible passages, especially the book of Revelation. You can think back of times in your own life or others you've known that have said the end times are upon us. All right, to be technical, we're all in the end times. Anytime after Christ is considered the end times. And really, what you need to worry about more is your end time than the end time of the world. Are you right with Jesus? But that's another topic for another time. Right now, let's look at the context of what is happening in the book of Revelation. So John, the Apostle John, we believe, who also wrote the Gospel of John, the epistles 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John, is the writer here in Revelation. And the word revelation means revealing, an unveiling, or a revealing. So what's happening here is Jesus Christ, through visions, is revealing things to John to tell to 7 specific, actual, real churches in Asia Minor. He is revealing what John is revealing what Christ wants these churches to know. These churches are under a Roman-dominated world. There are several Christians in these churches that have lost their ability to be a faithful witness in the example of Jesus Christ. That is the theme of Revelation. Christ is the ultimate faithful witness. Go to Revelation 2 for that. And that we are to mirror image his witness, even if it brings us unto death, much like it did Christ. So Jesus is the faithful witness. And of these 7 churches, John is praising some, and then, or Christ is praising some, and then chastising some. And for some, he has both praise and chastisement. So, but it all depends on which team they chose to follow. Team Jesus or Team Satan. And again, oversimplified. Satan in Revelation 12 is depicted as a great dragon. There's a battle that happens in heaven, and he loses this battle, and he's cast down to earth where he is to stay until the final judgment. In Revelation 13, we see that the dragon has 2 beasts which serve underneath him, sort of like his minions. These are depicted through Rome and also through Babylon. They are really just standing in the place of any dominant world power that thinks it doesn't need God. So these 2 beasts serve the dragon, but what we tend to believe is that they don't know they're actually doing the bidding of the dragon, who is Satan. So they represent these dominant world powers which think they have the ultimate power when really they're under the influence of Satan. And then there are those who serve the beast. So that would be the inhabitants of the world. That doesn't mean everyone who's down here. That means there are those who are faithful witnesses, those who are doing everything they can to live through the tribulation of this world, being a Christian in an evil world, which many of us are. Which is what's happening around us. And then you have the inhabitants of the world. Those throughout Revelation are depicted as those who have rejected the teachings of Christ, the apostles, and the prophets who came before them. So the inhabitants of the world are those who follow the instruction and do the bidding of the beast, who by extension are doing the bidding of Satan or the dragon. And this says that they are marked. Now that is not a literal or actual mark. That's figurative language that John is using here. But we see is that their allegiance and loyalty will be depicted by their actions and by what they think. So this mark that is on them, this 666, this mark of the beast, this number of the beast, is not an actual literal mark. It's not an actual literal thing. It is their actions are going to distinguish them from those who follow Christ, the faithful witnesses. That is portrayed by the work of their hands. That's why they're marked on the right hand, and by what they think or what they believe. That's why they're marked on the forehead. Now, one thing you need to know is that the Apostle John uses a lot of Old Testament references in the book of Revelation. I mean, a lot. He quotes and references several prophets from the Old Testament. And so when he references this number of the beast or mark of the beast being on their hands and on their foreheads, what he's actually doing is he is referencing back a passage in Deuteronomy 6. Where it says, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one." And then he goes on to say that you should teach your children to walk in the ways of the Lord, and these teachings you should bind on their hands and on the frontlets of their eyes. So in Deuteronomy, we see that those who are following Yahweh, those who are following God, are going to have their teachings figuratively bound to them. So everything they do, everything they see, it's all God. So they know exactly who they serve. They were to make everything they do be about God. When they rise up, when they go along the way, when they go to bed, it's all about God. So you see there's this heavy emphasis on those who follow God. It's going to be on their hands and on their eyes because that's all they think about. So bringing this back to Revelation 13, when we see that the number or the mark of the beast is on their hands and on their foreheads, this is what's going to be called the anti-Shema. So the Shema is what's referenced there in Deuteronomy chapter 6 and a few other passages for practicing Jews that go through these prayers throughout the day. But what we see here is in Revelation 13, John making a reference to that passage, saying those who are on team Satan, it's going to be known by the work of their hands and by what they think and what they see. It's going to be the opposite of what the Jewish people were taught in Deuteronomy chapter 6. So in the same way how the children of God were to bind his teaching to their hands and to their eyes, those who are on team beast, team dragon, team Satan, that they will be known by their actions and by their thoughts, being by what's on their hands and on their eyes. So it's not an actual literal mark of the beast. It means, he said, when you show up, you're going to know whose team they're on by their actions, by how they walk, by how they talk, by what they do. It's going to be like a mark on them. Similar to those who follow Yahweh, by what they say, by what they do, by their actions. They're going to be marked, if you will, by whose team they are on, which God they serve. So this is John's way of saying to these 7 churches and to us by extension that your actions, our actions and thoughts will determine whose team we're on. It won't be something that is out of our control, much like Hollywood will depict a possession of someone, and then they're all the marks, the numbers are on the wrist and head, and it's out of their control. Not at all the case. You are in control of whose team you're on. You can choose whether you are to be marked by Satan or whether you're going to be spared and marked by Jesus Christ. But what about the numbers? What's the significance of 6s and the significance of having it repeated 3 times? All right. So again, more context here. John is writing in what's called an apocalyptic style. Apocalypse in the New Testament times, in the biblical times, was a style of writing. It was much like suspense or action. It would be like a genre, if you will. So what John is doing here is he is writing this for eschatological purposes. That's just your big fancy church word for the end of times. So John is writing about the end of times that is to come and what it's going to look like, but he's doing it in a way that is so big and so fantastical that it grabs the attention of the reader. Much like you have C.S. Lewis or J.R.R. Tolkien or other writers like that use big figurative language to actually tell an allegorical story. That's what John is doing here, because these 7 churches in Rome are so entrenched in their culture, so deep in the Roman world, that they've grown numb to this story of Christ, which they've heard time and time and time and time again. Much like you and I, when we go to church, like, I've heard this story, I know what happens. What John is doing is he's using big language to tell these 7 churches, hey, Jesus has a team, Satan has a team, Jesus' team wins, pick a team. But he does it in big, big language. So in this apocalyptic style of writing, there was often big, fantastical imagery, which John does starting in chapter 4 all the way through the end of the book, and it also uses numbers. Now, numbers had a very important role in this style of writing. Biblical numerology had different numbers meaning different things, and you can look it up on your own, but 2 or 3 numbers, for example, 7 was depicted as complete, whole, or perfect, and that was referenced back to the 7-day week of creation. So God created the world in 7 days, and in doing that, it was complete, it was perfect, it was whole. So anytime, at least in Revelation, that 7 is used, it represents perfection or wholeness. So you have 7 churches in Asia. Now, I believe that John was writing to 7 literal churches, but by extension, we take it to mean the whole perfect, or not perfect, but the whole and complete church, those who follow Jesus Christ. That's why we take this book and read it like, oh, we can apply this to us because we know a little bit about the numerology and the number 7 here. Again, based on a 7-day week of creation. Also, you would go to 6, which you see in the mark of the beast, 666. 6 was an incomplete week. So it was incomplete, it was imperfect. So that's why 6 is there. John also likes to use things in 3s. He'll use triplets a lot throughout this book. So if something is repeated or stated in 3 different ways or 3 times, that is a reference to the 3-person Godhead, which could also be holy. Holy not necessarily meaning perfect, but it means it is set apart. That's another one of those church words a lot of people misunderstand. Holy means set apart. God calls his people in Leviticus, and these teachings are echoed in Peter and in Matthew chapter 5, that we are to be perfect or holy as he is holy. No, God is calling his people to be set apart, to be different from the world with him. Imagine you have a favorite item of all your items, and you set it aside because it's special to you. Well, to you, that might be holy because it's set apart with you. And so with it, John uses 3s or triplets here, or the repetition of something 3 times, to emphasize how complete or whole or holy, that it actually is. So when he repeats something like 6, 6, 6, 6 being incomplete or imperfect, 3 being an infinite amount or a holy amount or a distinguished amount, he's saying this is the infinite amount of imperfection. If 7 was repeated 3 times, that'd be an infinite amount or a complete amount of perfection. So 6 is imperfect. And stating it 3 times puts a very strong emphasis on just how imperfect or incomplete it is. So bringing it back to Revelation 13 here, those who are on Team Beast, Team Dragon, Team Satan, more or less, would have been distinguished with an infinite amount of imperfection. That would be based upon the work of their hands and their thoughts. It would have been depicted by how they lived their lives, more or less. And that is why the mark of the beast is nothing more than just a person's actions are going to distinguish them to be on a losing team in a holy supernatural battle. And that distinguishing mark upon them is going to be made clear by their actions, by what they say, by what they do, by what they think. And that is only distinguishing them to be infinitely imperfect, just as the one whom they serve is infinitely imperfect, that being the dragon or Satan. And so, if we're going to have an overarching theme for Revelation, which again, greatly oversimplified, however long this video is, this is simplified. Jesus has a team, is infinitely perfect. And those who live through the tribulation of this world as a faithful witness are going to receive their reward. And those who choose to walk away and ignore Christ are marking themselves infinitely imperfect by their actions, by their thoughts, by their deeds, and they are choosing the losing side, and that is Team Satan. That is the mark of the beast in Revelation 13, greatly oversimplified. Thank you for watching this video. Have a great day.